Combat athletes are the greatest athletes in the world in my opinion. However, their greatest fight starts before they even enter the cage. This video is about extreme weight cutting in combat sports. If you look at Conor McGregor, he's fought at 3 weight classes. Look at the difference in how he looks when he weighed in at 145 to 170. The difference is drastic. It is no exaggeration to say that these athletes are risking their lives by cutting extreme weight. In this video, I'm going to explain to you why they do it, how they do it, and the dangerous new factor which is specifically risking the lives of UFC fighters. The BBC recently released a documentary about weight cutting in combat sports. I put the link in the description below. And what's important to take from this is that this is extreme. This is putting extreme stress on the body, and these athletes are risking their lives. Have a look at Conor McGregor. You can see at 145 he looks drawn out, dehydrated, and like a completely different person. You can also look at Cyborg, one of the greatest female MMA fighters alive, and you can see her drastic weight cut and how she's crying and in extreme pain during this weight cutting process. You also have the former UFC champion Renan Barão, who collapsed during his weight cut, injured himself and had to pull out of his fight with TJ Dillashaw. You have people like Rumble Johnson, who now fights at 205 but dropped weight all the way down to 170, as well as Khabib Nurmagomedov, who had to pull out of his fight recently with Tony Ferguson and was taken to hospital during his weight cutting process. So not only have we missed out on these great fights, but also the risk that the athletes are taking is huge. So why do they do this? Well, it's quite simple really. As a fighter, you want to fight at the lowest weight class possible so that you are bigger and stronger than your opponents. This is the thinking behind it. However, the scenario we have now is that everybody weight cuts. So essentially you have to weight cut just to fight people your own size. It's very rare you have someone who fights at the weight they walk around at. Frankie Edgar used to fight at 155, which is his natural walking around weight. Someone like Conor McGregor, who has taken these fights with Nate Diaz at 170, where he doesn't have to cut any weight at all. You have to realise that if a fighter weighs in at 185, for example, Chris Weidman, they don't actually weigh 185 in the fight. He'll weigh more closer to 200 pounds. They'll gain 10 to 15 pounds back by the time they step in the cage. For someone like McGregor, who has lots of money, who can pick and choose his fights, it makes sense that he's not going to want to cut weight back down to 145 and put his body through this extreme stress. Why would he? He can get these fights at 155 or 170 where he's a more natural weight. So the how. How do fighters cut this weight? Well, it's quite a complicated process. There are many ways to do it. You can take drugs, you can take diuretics to help drain the fluids out of your system, but of course this is now banned in the UFC. Essentially you'll start with a pre-cut. During your camp or even before your camp, you're going to look to lose as much body fat as possible to bring your weight down. You're also going to look not to build too much muscle mass. As muscle mass is heavy, you're going to look to maintain your muscle mass and your strength during your camp. However, it really is about water weight. As you approach fight week and the weigh-in and the fight, you're looking to lose large amounts of water weight. If you step onto the scales when you wake up in the morning and after you've had some food and drink in the afternoon, you're going to weigh more in the afternoon. And this is actually where many people get confused with weight loss, as they don't understand the idea of water weight versus body fat. So the way in which you lose this large amount of water weight is by manipulating your food intake. You manipulate nutrients such as carbohydrates, also substances such as sodium, which help you to retain water. And what you do is you retain large amounts of water, and as you approach fight week, you sweat out this water. You see people with sauna suits getting into saunas, doing cardio to sweat out this water weight. And of course, as you approach the weigh-in day, you will then stop drinking water. And that's why you see extremely severely dehydrated athletes at the scales. If you notice, once they step off the scales, they go straight for that water or that electrolyte drink because they're in such a bad state. They're putting their body through extreme stress, their organs through extreme stress. They are risking their lives. If you have a look at what Khabib recently said on the MMA Hour, he says that he risked his life. However, here is the new factor, specifically in the UFC, which is changing everything. They now have one of the strictest drug programs in all of professional sports. And the factor which affects weight cutting is that athletes are no longer allowed to use IVs, this intravenous fluid, which post their weight cut they would take immediately, and it would revitalize their body. In many ways it would get them back to a state of normality. Now the IV is not allowed anymore, the reason being that it can actually mask performance enhancing drug use. The side effect, of course, of not having IVs is it makes what was already a dangerous weight cut much more dangerous. And as a result, we're seeing athletes are not able to cut weight and then recover in time. There is a point of diminishing returns. There is a point at which you cut weight so far, you put your body through such stress that when it comes to fight night, your body has not recovered enough to put on an optimal performance. So by removing IVs, weight cutting is changing. And as we see more athletes failing to make weight, such as Kelvin Gastelum, Johnny Hendricks, we're seeing that fighters are actually having to move up a weight. But from my point of view, this is a good thing. To see fighters moving up a weight class, perhaps slightly smaller than their opponents at the moment, but being more healthy and not risking their lives. I believe that the removal of the IV is one major factor in why McGregor doesn't really look like he's going to fight at 145 again. Of course, there are many other factors, such as he could fight whoever he wants at any weight class to make the most money. But certainly these drastic weight cuts are absolute craziness, and hopefully there is a way that in the future this can be taken out of the sport. This is James Linker, Shredded Sports Science. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I'll see you soon.